Verify ready to resume count and go for launch. Say go, no go. OTC. Go. TDC. Tank and boosters are go.
Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the Starship Enterprise. Its ongoing mission to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no one has gone before. Scotty, Jim here, lock into my coordinates with a wide beam and scan the next 60 minutes for the ship's history log. And I'll contact you again when I'm ready to beam aboard. Over and out. Now, science fiction is rapidly becoming past. It's becoming real science. And that's probably the last science fiction you're going to get out of me tonight, unless we talk about it at a later time. Arthur C. Clarke, the writer of 2001, put it this way. He said, we have two options. Either we are alone in the universe or we are not. Both are equally terrifying. At the end of this program, I'm going to share 3 compelling reasons why Mars must be our objective for this space initiative. But let's get started with things we know but take for granted and how we can alter them in some sense. Because I believe that it's the little things in life that make a big difference. So let's talk about your future. Everyone raise your arm and wave your hand once before your body. You've just altered your future. You see, the future responds to your command, physically and mentally. When you move your hand, the universe moves. It's subtle, but it's inevitable. And when you move your mind, we're talking major ripple and massive change. The problem is, in today's world, most people don't move their minds very far. Albert Schweitzer was once asked, what's wrong with people today? And he said, people just don't think. Now, that's certainly not the case here today, but I would invite you to expand your thinking because we're going to talk about your future, Sasha. We're going to talk about your future. And it's interesting to note that when you know the future, think about this, when you know the future, it's not that difficult to figure out what to do in the present moment. We've experienced it so often ourselves. It's called hindsight. But flip it around, as I'm going to ask you to do with a lot of things in this talk tonight. When you know the present moment, where you are, how you're feeling, what your relationships are like, what your financial situation is, it's not that difficult to predict the future. And we all have one. Actually, we have several. We have a probable future, and we have an improbable future. Now, the probable future is, when I finish this talk, we'll rise from our chairs and go to our respective locations. The improbable future is, when I finish this talk, we'll rise from our chairs, we'll board a flight for Europe, and we'll spend the next 30 days on the French Riviera. It sounds like a good idea to me. But you have to admit, both probabilities exist. So my question is, where will you be 20 years from now in the year 2043? What new inroads will have taken place in the human experience? Will you have embraced the new technologies? Imagine the possibilities that await you. An explosion of information is bringing us into the future. Some of us, Dean, kicking and streaming. We can be pushed, we can be led, or we can step forward with confidence. The choices we make tonight will influence our journey. And one of the most powerful questions I'm asked all of the time, whether I'm in a program or at a social gathering, why are we spending so much time and money going to the moon and Mars when we have so many problems right here on Earth? Well, welcome to the unaware and the ignorant. Now, I'm not bashing ignorance. There's nothing wrong with being ignorant. All it is a lack of understanding. What baffles me is, why do so many people choose to remain that way? It was Neil deGrasse Tyson, the astrophysicist, Hayden Planetarium in New York. He's the director of that. He had an answer to that, or a comment about that. He said that lack of vision is so short-sighted, it could be the demise of our very existence. A little harsh on that, I would say. So let's talk about the little things, because it's the little things in life that will take us to Mars. Let's imagine that you are, some of you have liquid, whatever it is. You take a sip of water. Just kind of imagine yourselves taking a sip of water. Now, we all know that there's no new water on the planet. It's all been recycled. It's a process of eon after eons, we drank the same water. So the water you would be sipping could be the water that Jesus drank. It could be the water that Caesar touched his lips with. It could be the water of your great-grandchildren's grandchildren's quenching their thirst. And you want to ask, who in their right mind sits up all night thinking about this stuff? You know, not a lot of people. Well, I kind of do. So I brought some ideas along with spin-off technology. Some of the things we know, some of the things we take for granted. All right. By the way, I was giving a program in, Dana, where was that? Well, let me introduce you to the woman who makes my life the spectacular adventure that it is. My wife, Dana. Stand up, Dana. Let's give her a hand. I was giving a program in San Francisco. And it was with Catherine Thornton. Many of you know she's one of the astronauts, or was one of the astronauts for the Endeavour program. She was working on the optics for the Hubble telescope. And we were doing a program called Make Your Future Now. And she was talking about space spin-off. And her husband Steve was there, by the way, and he's a nuclear physicist. And she did her doctoral JS on light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation, laser beams. I can't have any idea what their breakfast conversation would have been like. But her spin-off technology, she talked about hydrogen and oxygen engines. She talked about radioisotope thermal electric generators. But when she started bringing it home, it made a lot more sense to me. Here are just some of the things she shared about space spin-off technology. Computer enhancements, iPods, iPhones, 3D food printing, silicon chips, cell phones, air scrubbers, freeze drying, new treatment for osteoporosis. And if it's cordless, fireproof and miniaturized, lightweight, strong, and animated, NASA probably had a hand in it. We're talking trash compactors, bulletproof vests, solar panels, artificial limbs, implantable heart monitors, GPS technology. Did you use that tonight? FSD, full self-driving cars. Mars spin-off technology will be available sooner rather than later. Oh, and by the way, any hospital that you walk into planet-wide, just about any switch you flip or button you push will have its trace back to space spin-off technology. All right. Something else we may know, and some of you may have watched this on February 6th, 2018. The Falcon 9 liftoff, did anyone watch that? It was plastered all over the TV. Several people did, okay. I was riveted. It was when Elon Musk made the first flight of the Falcon 9 Heavy rocket. Do you know that Elon Musk put his sports car in there? You saw the sports car. And why did he do that? Because he needed the ballast for weight and balance. he was having breakfast with his friend Jonathan Nolan, and Jonathan actually suggested that he use his sports car. He did offer that space to NASA, by the way. It was a $90 million gift, but NASA declined, and rightfully so, because when have you ever seen such a perfect test run for the very first time out of the chute that the Falcon 9 did? So he put his sports car in there, he released it, sent it off into Mars orbit with Mars around the sun, where it currently rests with Starman for the next billion or so years. What an advertising stunt. I mean, that was something else. That's no joke, what actually happens. Okay, speaking of jokes, how many remember George Carlin? George Carlin, I call him the serious humorist. He has points to his humor quite a bit. He died at a very early age. He was only 71. To you, it doesn't sound too young, but 71 is an early age to die. Anyway, he talked about values in one of his scenarios. And he was pretty raw, but let me give you a little snippet of what George says about values. I'll give you the clean version, Jayesh, that just to protect the audience here. He says, the paradox of our time is we build taller buildings, but we have shorter tempers. We have wider freeways, but narrower viewpoints. We have more degrees and less sense, more knowledge and less judgment. We've multiplied our possessions, but we've reduced our values. We talk too much, we love too seldom, and we hate too often. It's a time when there's much in the showroom window, but nothing in the stock room. It's a time when many will spend upwards of $1,000 a year on the outside of their heads, but often not a nickel on the inside. I mean, are these the kind of values you want to take to Mars to build a new society, a new culture, a new civilization? I don't think so. These are the words to consider by George. I'll tell you, what we really need is more critical thinking. We need more questions. We need more curiosity. We need more tea bag tag culture. How many of you have tea bags that you read these little inscriptions on the back? Have you done this? And what is that? Earth? Good Earth? Good Earth. Yeah. Great wisdom in those things. One says, the cure for boredom is curiosity, but there's no cure for curiosity. The second one was by Marilyn Monroe. I love this one. She said, those women who aspire to be more like men lack ambition. So, all right. Speaking of quotes, Plato, 400 BC, astronomy compels the soul to look upward and leads us from this world to another. Think about that. Was he talking about Mars? That's 400 BC. This is the best picture they had of Mars in 1937. It was taken at Lowell Observatory, the best one in 1937. We've enhanced it just a little bit on this level. This was taken by the Mariner, and it was taken in 1976 with enhancements in 2003. Here's a comparison between Earth and Mars size-wise. And we have this dream planet, which is so much to be discovered, with some facts about Mars. Now, a lot of you know some of this, but there are questions that I need to ask about it. Mars is half the diameter of Earth. 1 year on Mars is 687 Earth days, or 669 Martian sols. We call a day on Mars a sol, which is, 24 hours and roughly 39 minutes. We have an average temperature of minus 81 degrees, but it can get down to minus 240 degrees. And at the equator in the summertime, which, by the way, the seasons are double time because it is in an elliptical orbit around the sun. The only, correct me, Dean, if I'm right, it's the only elliptical orbit in our solar system.
It's the most elliptical. Yeah.
Thank you. I will remember that. Thank you. Okay. Dean's got the answer. Okay. So 70 degrees at the equator on occasion. It has two moons, Phobos and Deimos, probably a spin-off from the asteroid belt. We don't particularly know where they came from. Mars has one of the tallest mountains, we think, in the solar system. It is Olympus Mons. It's a little more than 3 times the height of Mount Everest, and it is about the width of the size of the state of Texas. And contrary to popular belief, there is water on Mars. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. So, that in mind, how are we going to get there? SpaceX Starship. Look at that beautiful piece of science and technology. It's a piece of art. How'd you like to take that puppy out for a spin around the block? You think about this. It seats 100 people. It has 40 cabins. On the launch pad, it stands 45 stories tall. 33 Raptor engines can put 150 tons in orbit. And it's reusable. And you think about it. I know Dana thinks about it every once in a while. She approached me the other day, last week actually it was, and she said, Jim, you know, the Starship is really much like the vacuum cleaner. Yeah, this is what she puts Occam's razor principle together very easily. Starship is very much like the vacuum cleaner. I said, explain that one to me. She said, well, they're both extremely noisy, they're both loud, and they're both reusable. And she said, Jim, why don't you take it for a spin around the house? Anyway, all right. Elon Musk continues with his concepts. He says, if we operate with extreme urgency, we may have a chance of making life multiplanetary. Still just a chance, not for sure. If we don't operate with extreme urgency, the chance is probably 0. Now, you can either watch it happen or you can be part of it. Now, some people look at what I'm about to share as a downer, but his concept is humans will become extinct if we do not reach beyond Earth. Stephen Hawking. We must continue to go into space for the future of humanity. I don't think we will survive another 100 years without escaping beyond our fragile planet. Our friend Arthur C. Clarke. The challenge of the great spaces between the world is a stupendous one, but if we fail to meet it, the story of our race will be drawing to its close. And then Alvin Toffler. The illiterate of our time are not those who cannot read or write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. And I was looking at a little newsletter by Paragon Steel, one of my clients. I was looking at this morning. Dana actually pointed it out to me. As Charles Darwin once wisely said, it is not the strongest of the species that will survive, nor the most intelligent, but the one most responsive to change. That's a beautiful concept. So along the same lines, if we can't communicate, and we're not flexible, and we can't work with teams of people, we'll never get to Mars. So the human factor is extremely essential. Technology is extremely important also, but it's worthless if we don't have respect for one another. So it's humanity we're talking about. Let me give you an example. Dana and I lived in Denver for a while, and we were, I got about 11 years. And I was out for my morning walk right around, anybody familiar with Denver, Colorado? We were in the Cherry Creek area, and I was out for my morning jog, and I was going pretty good, and this huge bruiser started coming toward me. He must have been 6'3", maybe weighed 250, 300 pounds, strong guy, maroon t-shirt, and he was barreling down the street at about 200 miles an hour. And I was on a pretty good clip myself, and we were in a collision course. So I figured, well, one of us better step aside. So I did. And we got about as close as we are right here, Jayesh, and I looked him in the eyes, and I smiled, and I said, "Good morning." And his eyes turned away from me. He picked up his pace double time. He sped on by me. I could feel the breeze as he walked on by. And I said to myself, that's sad. We all live on the same planet. We all eat the same foods. We have the same goals, the same needs, the same aspirations, Harry. And for some reason or other, we can't look each other in the eyes and smile. Well, the very next day on this very same street, very same time, here comes this same guy, same maroon t-shirt on. I was about a block away, but I knew it was him. I was downwind. There was no missing this guy. And we got about the same distance away, and I said to myself, as every single person in this room has at one time or another, okay, Jim, now is the time to take a risk. So I looked him in the eyes, and I smiled, and I said, good morning. And he stopped, dead in his tracks. He put his feet apart like this. He put his hand on his hip, and he pointed down at me. He said, do I know you? I said, yes, we met yesterday. It's happened to all of us. You've been in the restaurant, 15 minutes goes by, and you still don't have your menu or your water, and you get a little miffed. Say, come on over here. I'm an important person. I've got places to go, things to do, people to see. Can't you hurry it up for me? Or you're in the bank on a Friday afternoon or outside of the bank, the teller's having trouble making money. Finally, you get up there and say, come on, hurry it up. I've got to get out of here. I can't wait around for you all day. And the next day, the very same person with whom you were a little bit short with, a little bit curt with, possibly bordering on abusive, walks into your college physics class, walks into your Rotary Club, walks into your church, and the first person they see there is you. How pleased they're going to be. How long do you think they're going to want to stick around? I'm going to get out of there. What I'm sharing with you tonight, you don't need. Put your hand high over your head. Go ahead, put it over there. Now reach over and pat someone on the back. Go, Peter. You deserve to be congratulated. You came to the program tonight. How many people could be here? You got attendance at the college of 16,000. And you chose to be here. So, the message is simple. We need to learn to extend the same courtesies to perfect strangers as we would to those we love. But some people, maybe even in this room, need to learn to do the exact opposite, to extend the same courtesies to those they love as you would to perfect strangers. All right, what are we going to see? What are we going to see when we go to Mars? Renderings are kind of interesting. This is an Elon Musk SpaceX rendering with several starships out there and what a prospective beginning of a colony or settlement might look like. Here's another one with the domes, etc. These are artists' renderings, where we will live, whether it'll be ice houses, whether it'll be in the lava tubes, whether it'll be above ground. We don't know yet. We're still working on all of that. Here's an interior potential in one of the lava tubes, light coming in from above. This is a sleeping quarters. This is maybe how you're going to travel from dome to dome. We've got an observation deck here to look out at the beautiful universe out there waiting for us. Gardens, people roaming around in the gardens. And this is all in the future, and we'll get to why it is possible in a moment. Carl Sagan is one who talked about this. How many remember Carl Sagan? Did you ever see him on television? Billions and billions. He brought physics, and he brought astronomy to the real people. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying you're not real people. I mean, I'm not calling you weird. I'm just saying you're a little different. Your thinking is, I'm going to say, above and beyond the norm. Okay? Carl Sagan, great guy. I don't know the man. I only met him once. We were on a flight from Dallas to New York. I was speaking at Times Square Marriott, and he was going back to Cornell University. And we sat next to each other, just by chance. I learned a lot. And he had some very interesting things to say about Mars. One of them was, maybe we're on Mars because we have to be, because there's a deep nomadic impulse built into us by the evolutionary process. After all, we come from hunter-gatherers, and for 99.9% of our tenure on Earth, we've been wanderers. And the next place to wander is Mars. I thought that was put very well. Very well indeed. Right now I'm going to bring a gentleman in, Dr. Robert Zubrin. He's the founder and president of the Mars Society. He's a friend and a colleague and a visionary. And back in 1998, the Mars Society was formed with a team of people, and they identified 7 declarations by which the Mars Society is built. These, I will share 3 of them briefly, as I promised, that are very compelling reasons why Mars needs to be our objective for the space initiative. He talks about it as being the 3 points. Mars is where the science is, Mars is where the challenge is, and Mars is where the future is. All right. I talk about it as the Zubrianic shift. It's my own creation because he wants to bring technology and culture together in balance. And Mars is where the science is. All right. Our robotic probes, our Martian probes, have revealed that Mars was once a warm and wet planet suitable for hosting life's origin. The question we need to ask is, did it host life's origin? I mean, if we could discover that, what a fabulous discovery to find that out. Mars had liquid water on it for over 1 billion years. That's 5 times longer than it took life to appear on Earth before liquid water was formed here. And if the theory is correct that life and chemistry is a natural product of liquid water and ample elements and enough time, life should have appeared on Mars, even though it subsequently became extinct. And if we go to Mars and we find fossils of past life, we will have proven that life is a natural phenomenon in the universe. Case closed. But conversely, we go to Mars and we find areas of past liquid water, but no fossils of the development of life. That would mean that life and chemistry are really not a natural process that occur with any high probability, but the equation then includes an element of chance, which means we could be alone in the universe. Again, both scenarios are equally terrifying. This is hypothesis-driven critical science. This is the real thing. And we have, what's beautiful about this, we have the opportunity to discover the answers to these questions in the immediate future. But will we is the question. We missed our chance in the 70s when Nixon pulled the plug on the Apollo program. Why? Politics and money. We missed our chance in the 80s and 90s. Why? Politics and money. We missed our chance in the first 2 decades of the 21st century. Are we going to miss the chance in our 3rd decade in the 21st century? I predict we will not. One of the things that can be very distressing, I guess maybe disheartening would be a better word, is when seemingly qualified people address a subject with a shallow perspective that it can't be done, it'll never be done, or it's impossible to do. I could stand here until midnight and tell you stories about things that people said could not be done that turned out very successfully. Don't tell that to Gene Kranz. You know who Gene Kranz was. He was the mission control director of Apollo 13. We booked Gene Kranz and Jim Lovell in our agency for speakers and entertainers. And we put them on the road so they could share their message of the space program. He said all was going well on Apollo 13. Odyssey was doing wonderfully well until we heard those 5 chilling words that brought silence to the room. Houston, we have a problem. The telemetry was bouncing off the walls. It was all wrong. What's going on? He took his people and moved them to the room, and that's when the flak started flying. The LEM's not made to bring the people back. Odyssey is tumbling end over end. They have to navigate by themselves. They won't have the help of the computers. They can't do it by themselves. He said, stop. I don't want to hear any more about what can't be done. I want to hear only what can be done. We're bringing our men home. We're bringing them home safely. We need answers, and we need them now. Failure is not an option. Let's get to work. He knows how to use his mind. He knows the power of thought, and he knows the power of words. I call it word magic. Word magic will form the fabric of your future. When you change the things you say about the things you do, you will change your experience. When you change the things you say about those with whom you associate, you will change your relationship. It's a law, and there's not that much allowance for ignorance. Now, number 2, Mars is where the challenge is. I believe that people are like societies and civilization. They're very similar. We thrive and grow when we are challenged, and we stagnate and decay when we're not. The Humans to Mars program will be a tremendously bracing challenge for our society. And it will be tremendously challenging, especially for our youth. The Humans to Mars program would say to any kid in school, you learn your science, and you will be able to explore new worlds. That alone would open the door to bringing millions of more scientists, inventors, engineers, technological entrepreneurs, doctors, nurses, medical researchers, and so much more. And the intellectual capital that would benefit our world from that would be innumerable to create more knowledge and a financial return that would utterly dwarf the cost of the space program. We need to leave our students, if you will, with hope. Now, you're adults, but we need to build hope for little kids too. We need to have, hope's a weak word, but I think we need to leave them with some kind of an expectancy. Maybe there's something better out there. I believe we need to do that. Have you ever read the studies on expectancy? I think it was Robert Rosenthal's studies. It was done a couple of decades ago. It took a large group of children and they gave them the Stanford Binet IQ test. And they gave them the test and listed their IQs. And then they took the teachers of the students. You may have read these studies if you're teaching. The teachers of the students, and they split it in half. Half the group, they gave the teachers the IQs of their children. And those with high IQs, they said this is their IQ and this is what to expect. Those with average IQs, likewise, and those with low IQs, this is what to expect. Then they took the other half of the teachers and gave them the numbers. But they didn't give them the IQ numbers. They gave them their locker numbers. And those children with high locker numbers, they said this is their IQ and this is what to expect. Those with average locker numbers, this is their IQ and this is what to expect. And those with the low locker numbers, likewise. It was a one-year study. So 1 year passed. At the end of the year, those children with high IQs were high achievers. Those with average IQs were average in their work, and those with low IQs were underachievers, just what you would expect. But those children with high locker numbers were high achievers. Those with average locker numbers, 85, 100, 115, they were average in their work, and those with low locker numbers were failing an exceptionally high degree of numbers. It says to me that what you expect of someone influences their performance. And it says to me, if you turn it around like some of these others, when you raise the image you have of yourself, you raise the level of your performance. When you lower the image you have of yourself, you lower the level of your performance. I'll say it again. It all operates by law, and there's not that much allowance for ignorance. Elon Musk put it this way. I like what he says on this. He said, there have to be reasons why you want to get up in the morning and you want to live. You want to think that the future is going to be better than today, that it's going to be a bright day. Otherwise, it's not. He said, if the future does not include being out there among the stars and being a multi-planet species, I find that highly, incredibly depressing. Number 3, final point. Mars is where the future is. Mars is the closest planet to Earth with all of the resources to support life and therefore civilization. If we do what we can now to establish our little Plymouth Rock settlement, then 500 years from now, we will have new branches of humanity on Mars. And I would go so far as to say in the nearby interstellar space as well. I mean, 200 years from now. People are not going to remember which faction came out on top. The mega right Republicans, the conservative Republicans, the liberal Democrats, or the libertarians. They're not going to remember which news channel delivered the news more accurately. CNN, Fox, C-SPAN, ABC, CBS. And I guarantee you, without any reservation, unequivocally, they will have no concept of Dancing with the Stars. None whatsoever. But you know what they will remember? They will remember when and how life became multiplanetary. And they will remember what we did to make their civilization possible. If you haven't heard anything I've said until now, please tune in, because you are the future. People are following your example, and what you do in your behavior, your habits, your attitudes, your beliefs, your values, they are monitoring these. And we are at a pivotal point in history, future history of our entire galaxy. This will be the time that will be remembered. There's only one time we can make life multiplanetary, and we are honored with that privilege of living in that time. The hour is late, the stakes could not be higher, the project could not be harder, but the payoff could not be greater. We're going to Mars, and we're going soon. And I want to leave you with a wish. I wish for you one of two things. I wish for you that you fall asleep tonight on the wings of a magical dream and wake up with a purpose. Or I wish for you that you're always blessed with high locker numbers because you're going to need them. Thank you for your kind attention.